Epic Games has sold ArtStation and Sketchfab to KitBash 3D. ArtStation and Sketchfab are now becoming part of KitBash ecosystem alongside KitBash 3D and Grayscale Gorilla. The financial terms of the deal haven't been publicly disclosed, and this is interesting because Epic didn't just own two random websites. ArtStation became one of the most important places for artists to showcase their works, build portfolios, and find opportunities. And Sketchfab becomes one of the biggest places for sharing and discovering 3D assets. It acquired ArtStation back in 2021 and Sketchfab the same year. So now, just a few years later, both are leaving Epic, and that immediately raises a question: what is Epic actually doing for the creator ecosystem? Epic has Unreal Engine, Fortnite, MetaHuman, Fab, and a massive creative ecosystem. But now ArtStation and Sketchfab are going to somewhere else. For artists, the interesting part is what Kitbash does with these platforms. Because Kitbash already operates around the idea of giving assets to artists and production resources. So this could actually make sense strategically. Still, it's a pretty big change. And for artists who have spent years of building ArtStation portfolios, this is one of the stories worth watching. Another piece of CG history is coming to an end. Autodesk is discontinuing Mudbox. Autodesk has announced that it is discontinuing sales of new and renewable Mudbox subscription. The transition started on August 7, 2026, and remaining subscription sales ends later this year. Mudbox was one of the very important tool in digital sculpting and texture painting world. It was used in film, television, games, and VFX. Obviously, the market has changed. ZBrush became most dominant name in digital sculpting. Blender and Maya became much more capable and powerful, and production pipelines have become increasingly specialized. So the question isn't really why is Mudbox dying. The more interesting question is how many traditional standalone DCC tools can survive, because artists today have more options than ever. You can sculpt in ZBrush, model in Blender or Maya. You can also use procedural workflows like Houdini. You can also use AI assisted tools. And increasingly, artists are combining all of this. Mudbox disappearing isn't a necessarily disaster, but it is another sign that the traditional CG software landscape is changing drastically. MiniMax history being pushed into Comfy involving video, audio, and ComfyUI, and LTX 2.5 has arrived with open weights and a strong focus on fast video generation. The really interesting part is LTX 2.5 can generate 10 seconds video extremely quickly on a supported NVIDIA hardware, and because the weights are open, the workflow can happen on your own hardware rather than depending entirely on cloud service. This is important for VFX because imagine a workflow where you don't have to upload every shot some external cloud service. You can have the model locally, you have ComfyUI, you have GPU, you can experiment, iterate, generate variations, potentially integrate those results into your own pipeline. We are still far from replacing traditional VFX pipeline, and the direction becomes very clear. And next one is interesting for independent creators. YouTube has announced that starting February 1, 2027, new applicants to the YouTube Partner Program will need 8,000 qualified public watch hour in the previous year or 20 million qualified shots in 90 days. That's double the current 4,000 hour and 10 million shot thresholds for a full ad revenue eligibility. Existing partners are being grandfathered in, and this could hit independent animation particularly hard because creating animation takes time, a lot of time. A solo animator might spend weeks or months for making a one YouTube video animation, which means they are already competing against creators who can publish more frequently. Now imagine needing twice the watch time threshold. That makes consistency, audience retention, production efficiency, and even more important. This is why I think YouTube isn't just a story, it's an animation industry story, because YouTube has become one of the places where independent animator can build an audience without a traditional studio behind them. So increasing the barrier to monetization could have real impact on that ecosystem. Now this news sounds completely random. Why a language learning company buying animation studios? Duolingo has acquired a London based animation and motion design studio Animate. And this isn't the first move into animation. Animate is joining Duolingo's design studio, following earlier studio acquisition include Gunner and Hobbs. And honestly, I think this is a fascinating trend because Duolingo isn't buying animation companies because it suddenly wants to become Pixar. Animation is becoming part of the product, the characters, the branding, social media content, advertising, and user experience. This could mean a sign of something bigger. Tech companies don't just want software anymore, they want creative capabilities inside the company. And that could create new opportunities for animation, motion design artists outside the traditional film and TV. And now, one of the strangest Hollywood stories. Coyote with Acme, Warner Bros. Spent around 70 million for making the film. Then the movie was shelved. It became part of the wave of projects that were written off rather than released. But the story didn't end here. Independent distributor Ketchup Entertainment eventually acquired the movie for around 50 million, bringing it back to life. Think about that. A 70 million movie was completed. The audience want to see it. The filmmaker wanted to release, and yet it almost disappeared. This is a fascinating example how much the economics of filmmaking have changed. A movie can be finished still not considered commercially viable for studio that made it. And Coyote with Acme now become one of the rare cases that were public pressure and another distributor helped a rescued film. Next is just a quick software update. Cascadeur 2026 was out. The latest version adds an animation layer, involves easing control, PVH related improvements, and among other changes. For anyone working in character animation, the animation layer workflow is probably the future you want to watch. It allows animator to separate and modify different parts of motion without destroying the underlying animation. Cascadeur continuing position itself as a physics-based and AI-assisted animation tool, and that makes us interesting example of being AI integrated into artist workflow rather than simply trying to generate a finished shot. And one of the mainly new section is Visual Effects Society has announced the speakers for its inaugural Woman Who Leads the Summit. The event is scheduled for September 4th in Los Angeles with panels focused on leadership, technology, and next generation of talent. It's good to see VFX industry creating dedicated spaces around leadership and career development. And hopefully these conversations aren't just about representation at the top, but also about the next generation of artists actually gets opportunity to get there. And if you are working in VFX, you probably heard of RV, one of the industry standard tools for reviewing playback and professional media. With the open source version, OpenRV has reached version 4, and this isn't just a cosmetic update. OpenRV 4.0 moves to newer VFX reference platform CY 2025, bringing updated core dependencies include newer versions of OpenColor.io, OpenEXR, Python, and other components. It also updates its media pipeline with FFmpeg 8, improving the support for modern video format and codecs. For artists, one of the more visible environments is the annotation system, with expanding tools like shapes, text, stamps, and like and for example, the shapes like arrow, box, and circle. There is also improved presentation on playback functionality along with updates in scripting and pipeline capabilities. OpenRV is still much technical and pipeline oriented application, but version 4 shows open source VFX ecosystem is getting stronger. And few more things that worth knowing this week. MetaFuse Glimmer is another interesting development that growing push towards efficient AI models and creative generation. NVIDIA's Nemotron model are part of the broader movement towards open and local AI. NVIDIA is increasingly push AI hardware workflows across RTX and DGX hardware. HP's ZGX Nano AI workstation is another example of industry trying to put serious AI compute closer to individual creators and smaller teams. And Autodesk continuously pushed AI assistant into a creative ecosystem. Next one, subscribe for topicroomvfx.com. Thank you for watching.